You know, when most of us think about serious weight loss, our minds immediately jump to major invasive surgery. But what if there was another way? Today, we're going to look at a procedure that's really changing the game.
So, if you've ever found yourself looking for something that lands right in that sweet spot, more effective than diet and exercise alone, but not as drastic as full-on bariatric surgery, then you're in the right place. Here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll break down what this new option actually is. Then, we'll take a look under the hood to see how it's all done. After that, we'll dive into the really important stuff, the pros and cons, what you can expect in terms of results, and finally, we'll tackle that big question: is this actually right for you?
Okay, so what is this groundbreaking non-surgical alternative? It's called endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty, but you'll almost always hear it called ESG for short.
Now, the key phrase here is minimally invasive. I want you to completely forget the typical image of surgery, because with ESG, there are absolutely no cuts on the outside of your body. A surgeon actually goes inside the stomach to make it smaller. And the result? Well, you feel full much faster on a lot less food.
Now, this isn't for everybody. It's really designed for a specific group of people, folks with a body mass index, or BMI, that's somewhere between 30 and 40. It's a great option for those who've tried everything with diet and exercise without success, and maybe for people who are considered too high risk for traditional surgery. So how in the world does this actually work? I mean, how can a surgeon completely reshape your stomach without making a single incision? Let's get into the fascinating mechanics of it.
So first off, the patient is completely asleep under general anesthesia. Then, this flexible tube, called an endoscope, is guided down into the stomach. It's got a tiny camera and surgical tools on the end. Using those tools, the surgeon places a pattern of stitches inside the stomach wall. These stitches are then pulled tight, almost like a drawstring, folding the stomach in on itself and creating a much smaller banana-shaped sleeve. And here's the amazing part. The whole thing only takes about an hour or two, and many patients get to go home that very same day.
The best way to visualize this is to think of an accordion. The procedure basically folds and cinches the stomach together, just like you're squeezing an accordion closed. This accordion method does more than just shrink the stomach's size. It also slows down how quickly food leaves it, which is a huge part of what helps you feel full for so much longer.
Right about now, you might be thinking, hey, isn't this just like a gastric balloon? And that's a great question, but they're actually very different. A balloon is a temporary device, a foreign object that just sits there and takes up space. ESG, on the other hand, physically reshapes your own stomach tissue for a much more permanent effect. And what's really crucial here is that ESG can actually lower your levels of ghrelin. That's the hunger hormone, which is something a simple balloon just can't do.
Of course, with any medical procedure, you have to look at both sides of the story. So let's talk about the good stuff, the benefits, and also the potential risks you need to be aware of.
The advantages are pretty compelling. No cuts means a way faster recovery, less pain, and a much lower risk of complications compared to traditional surgery. And here's a huge plus. It's actually reversible. Those stitches can be taken out if needed. On the flip side, the risks are usually pretty mild and temporary. Things like some nausea or stomach pain right after the procedure. More serious problems like an infection or bleeding, they're incredibly rare. All right, so the procedure is done. What happens next? Let's walk through what recovery looks like and the kind of results you can actually expect to see.
So, let's talk numbers. What kind of results are we talking about? On average, patients can expect to lose about 15 to 20% of their total body weight in that first year. Just to put that into perspective, if someone weighs 250 pounds, that's a weight loss of around 37 to 50 pounds. That's significant.
Now, recovery is all about giving your stomach time to heal properly, so it follows a really structured diet plan. You start with just liquids for the first few days, then you gradually move to soft foods for a few weeks. By about a month out, you can get back to eating a normal, solid food diet. But the big change? Your portion sizes are going to be way smaller.
Okay, this part is so important. The ESG procedure is an incredible tool, but it is not a magic wand. Lasting, long-term success is all about committing to a new lifestyle.
Look, the main thing to remember is that ESG gives you a massive head start, but you're the one who has to keep the momentum going. Real success comes down to building new habits, eating smaller meals, making healthier food choices, getting regular exercise, and of course, staying connected with your medical team. It's really a partnership between you and the procedure. And finally, let's get down to the brass tacks and answer two of the biggest questions anybody would have. First, what if it doesn't work as well as you hoped? And second, what about the real-world barriers? Like the cost.
A really common concern is, what if I don't lose enough weight? Well, the great news is you have options. Since no part of the stomach was actually removed, the ESG procedure can be redone to tighten things up. Or it can act as a kind of bridge, setting you up for a more traditional surgical option like a gastric sleeve later on if that becomes the best path.
But there is a pretty big hurdle we need to talk about. A quote from one of our sources really hits the nail on the head. The procedure depends on one specific high-tech suturing device. And with no competition, the price is high, and that cost is the single biggest barrier keeping ESG from being more widely available.
And this chart really puts that cost into perspective. As of 2024, the average price tag swings wildly depending on where you are in the world. We're talking $15,000 to $18,000 in the US, about £10,000 to £12,000 in the UK, and it can be lower in other places. This financial reality is, without a doubt, a huge factor for anyone considering this.
So where does all this leave us? Well, ESG isn't a quick fix, and it definitely comes with real costs and a serious need for commitment. But for the right person, someone who's looking for a major, lasting change without the permanence and risks of major surgery, this really does represent an exciting new path. Could this be the key that unlocks a healthier future for millions? It's definitely one to watch.